I had the impression that Wisconsin is the closest of the swing states. And I don't know how true that is because I just saw in Breitbart a new poll that has Trump up by 5 over Biden, and then he's up by 6 in an RFK race. But a lot of polls I've been seeing lately is just like Trump up by 1 or something, which is less than in Georgia and Pennsylvania and all these, and even Michigan. What are you seeing poll wise in Wisconsin?
Yeah, you're right. Wisconsin of kind of the big 7, the people focus on ourselves. Georgia, of course, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Michigan. Of the big 7, Wisconsin is usually the most competitive of them. I mean, by way of background, Wisconsin's got just under 6 million people. We've had 12 races. Think about this, Mike. We've had 12 races in 24 years in this state that have been decided by less than 30,000 votes. 12 races,
wow.
Including both Trump races, Bush Jr., W's 2 races. Ron Johnson, our great U.S. Senator here, was reelected by about 27. Scott Walker lost his governor's race by about 30 and an AG race the same night by 20. So we shoot it out in the streets here in Wisconsin, but I think the Breitbart numbers are pretty close. I was saying to someone yesterday, if I jumped up and down every time I saw a new poll result, I'd be in the chiropractor's office 24 hours a day because this state is so close all the time. Yeah. Everything is, the knife fight in the phone booth politically. And I think that'll be the case this year. Biden has been here every month. We've been so fortunate to have the vice president come in a couple of times. Can't wait for her to come back. And, so it's a shootout here, and I think your analysis is right. This is the closest of the swing states, and I'm not going to be surprised if it continues to be.
Is RFK on the ballot?
Will be. They have a window to collect only 2,000 signatures is all they need to get on the ballot in Wisconsin. They're in that window right now. Heck, I could get on the ballot for 2,000 signatures statewide and a state with 6 million people. So we are fully expecting he'll be on the ballot. We fully expect Biden or whoever the nominee happens to be, let's just say the Democratic Party and other interest groups, to try to fight that. But 2,000 signatures isn't a very high bar.
Okay, all right, interesting. Because in that poll, and this seems to be nationwide too, that Trump seems to do better in the 3-way, or I guess it's really technically a 5-way race. Trump does a little bit better. So I think Trump's people want RFK on the ballot, and Joe's people do not. This kind of came up yesterday with talking about the chaos of the Democrats and what happens if Joe is out and they do someone else. Does Wisconsin have time? Would Joe Biden or would the Democrats have time to put someone else on the ballot in Wisconsin if it came down to some sort of brokered convention or something?
Yeah, I think they'd have time to do it. I mean, my theory on this is that I think legally they would end up with time to do it. I think the big, the issue, right, is do they go that? I don't think that I cannot imagine a situation in which the Democrats have a brokered convention as in an outright open convention. I can't imagine that. And that, what's interesting about this is they're doing, they're going to do this online endorsement of Joe Biden or nomination of Joe Biden to kind of get ahead of the issue. But the truth of it is, I mean, you think about this historically, right? If this convention, frankly, is fixed for Joe Biden or for someone else, it will be the 3rd Democratic National Convention in a row to be rigged. You look at 2016, you had Hillary and you had Bernie. And so the establishment Democrats were all anxious to avoid Bernie, and so they do everything they can to make sure it's rigged for Hillary. Then to 2020, you've got, if you had headed into that convention, Mike, the Democrat convention, that year, Bernie would have gone in with a plurality against Joe Biden. Remember the great $500 million Michael Bloomberg experience that failed, $500 million for nothing. So they tried to get someone else behind besides Joe. They ended up with Joe, so they rigged that convention. So if Joe is out of the picture, let's say he is in the next couple of weeks, they'll rig another convention for somebody else. So, for all the talk about the establishment and everything else, it's the Democrats who love the establishment.
It's Brian Schimming, chairman of the Wisconsin Republican Party. Here's why I wanted to ask you on, Brian. These drop boxes,
right?
The Wisconsin Supreme Court and drop boxes. We were talking to Chip Roy yesterday about the SAVE Act, but that's future stuff, right? Proving you're a citizen before you vote.
Right.
I'm interested in a couple months from now. What is the state of election integrity in Wisconsin when it comes to the drop box?
Well, I think it takes so our Supreme Court now, as you know, 4-3 liberal Supreme Court. It flipped last April, reversed itself from 2 years ago, and are allowing drop boxes. And so the plain letter law in Wisconsin is that a ballot be returned in person to the municipal clerk. It doesn't mean that it, gets left, somewhere or dropped off with someone or bagged in or anything like that. It's the plain letter law is there. From my discussions with various attorneys, they're not sure that we would win on appeal. And I'm saying to people now, look, as state chairman, I can't stand the Dropbox ruling. We were against it. But I also have to deal with reality. But we've taken the approach from the get-go that we're going to have to deal with all sorts of election issues. We recruited 5,500 poll workers statewide last year by the November deadline. In Wisconsin, you have to have your poll workers recruited the year before. So
wow.
Right. So we recruited 5,500 poll workers that would, and actually we activated that network of people to help with local elections in April when statewide, this past April elections, we passed 2 anti-Zuckerbucks referenda to get rid of Zuckerbucks in local elections and won dozens of local elections. I mean, we really had a good April here in Wisconsin, and we utilized about 1,000 shifts of poll workers there. So we had the most successful, the Republican Party poll worker recruitment. So that's going to be part of it. Observers, I mean, to me, it's kind of a cradle to grave on each ballot. And if that means observers on drop boxes, we'll do that. If it almost in a way doesn't matter what it means. We're going to have over 500 attorneys, volunteer attorneys, step up for this election. So I've told crowds and people who are excited about it, which they should be. I am too. But as state chairman, I got to deal with reality. I can complain about drop boxes, and I do. But on the other hand, we got to show the way through this thing. So that's what I'm doing, and that's what we're doing. It's something that we're talking about. But I'll give you a quick example, Mike, of why these poll workers and why these networks of securing the vote are important. In this past April election, the clerk, the Democrat clerk in Stevens Point up in central Wisconsin, tried to run background checks on all our legally submitted poll workers. In Green Bay, Wisconsin, up there, 3 national independent groups essentially were doing a giveaway at a local park, giving away free stuff for people who went and voted. We went to the DA there. He issued a letter to those groups within an hour or so, and they had to shut the event down completely. And to put icing on the cake, they made them pay the $25,000 rental for the event venue anyway. So there are day-to-day things. There are absentee ballot things. There are examples like the 2 things I just brought up, where if you're not vigilant about securing the vote, you and I both know the left will do anything to influence an election. So we just have to be ready for it. If it's drop boxes, we got to be ready. I'm a big proponent of early vote. I continue to be, especially in a state like Wisconsin, where we don't. I mean, one of the interesting things about Wisconsin, I don't know if I call it interesting, but one of the things about Wisconsin is we don't have party registration here. So you have to go and kind of mine information, go ask voters their preferences and all the usual census and demographic and all those types of things. It's even a bigger burden in Wisconsin, which gets to your original point. Wisconsin's a competitive state. That's kind of one of the reasons.
Oh, interesting. I don't think I'm overstating that you have one of the most important jobs in this entire next election here. Like, it all comes down to you, Brian.
I keep making sure people that, and they're going back to work.
In that case, what are you doing here? Go. So what is the problem with the Dropbox? / what are your Dropbox watchers watching? What are they looking for?
Well, we'll have. I think the problem with the Dropbox, just broadly speaking, would be if you have, what amounts to people bringing piles of votes in and just using them as receptacles for I mean, we technically don't have ballot harvesting in Wisconsin per se. But the problem with drop boxes would be the problem with any unsupervised place to drop off votes is that you can't really tell what's going on there. You have some drop box attached to a pole in the middle of the night or something like that where people can just dump off, maybe multiples of votes. And so it gets to an observer issue. The Elections Commission in Wisconsin, the Secretary of State doesn't run the elections. We have a statewide elections commission. But largely, Mike, the elections are run by local clerks. We have 1,850 places to vote here in Wisconsin. 1,850 town, villages, cities. And so it's huge, right? And so it's a little bit of the Wild West. And so we're conscious about that and about the potential for abuse there. And so we have to do what we can. That same Elections Commission, I believe, is meeting today or tomorrow to define kind of what a drop box is and what the rules might be around this.